And so it's Sunday, April 17th, 2016, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today, we're joined by one of our mentors, Addi, Regev, Director of Product at Outbrain, to lead a talk on Agile in the real world. Allow me to briefly explain the format for you. If we have some other people might be joining us a little bit later, jumping into the room with us. Those are mentors and mentees from the Product Mentor program. These are people who have committed 5 to 6 months of their lives to becoming better product people and in turn creating better products. And so it's one mentor gets paired up with one mentee. We're in over 20 countries around the world, and we're always looking for more mentors. So what we're going to do and so wherever you're watching us, wherever you're watching this video, you can always submit your questions in real time to today's mentor, and you just go to theproductmentor.com/live, and as the questions come in, I'll be passing them along to Addi. Also, if there are more generic product management questions, a little bit off topic, maybe not much about Agile, I'll save those questions to the end. So it's not that I haven't seen the question. I just like to keep the topical ones to the closer to real-time stuff. So just a little bit about myself. I am Jeremy Horn, aka the Product Guy, and I'll be moderating here today. So as the questions come in, I'll be feeding them over to Addi. But with all that said, let me hand it over to Addi to take it away.
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen here and start the presentation. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to realize the potential of Agile. We're going to talk about the practices of Agile. We're going to talk about the principles and the benefits of Agile, but we're also going to talk about the pitfalls and how to try to avoid them or what to take into consideration. So let's just jump right into it. So what is Agile? Agile is a time-boxed iterative approach to software delivery, and it builds software incrementally. This is as opposed to the traditional waterfall in which you go through the whole development lifecycle and deliver something at the end. So it's an alternative to the traditional project management, and it basically helps the teams respond to the unpredictability of a long project. Basically by doing incremental iterative work with a lot of checkpoints in the way, both in what you're delivering and how you delivered it, to basically be able to show value or present value to the customer faster with much less risk. So the whole point is building the right product, right? So it's not building something that you thought was the right product at the inception of the project and kind of worked on it step by step and took longer than probably expected, took more time, more resources, and delivered eventually something to the customer that is maybe happy with and maybe not, because things have changed, market have changed, market dynamics have changed, or the customer's requirements have changed. Basically, as opposed to what Agile does, which basically delivers small increments on a regular basis, starting with kind of what we call an MVP, a minimally viable product, which is something that the customer might not want at the end, but can achieve some of the goals of the customer faster. So if we are aiming to build a car, we start with something that allows you to move from one place to another. At the beginning, it will be a skateboard, which is probably not equivalent to a car, but it has the basic elements of somewhere to put your leg on and the wheels. This is something that, like the bicycle, that allows you to move from one place to another, but you still exert a lot of effort in yourself all the way to the car that the customer would want. And if you pay attention to the funny faces, you'll see that the client is basically has the potential to be happier faster and much happier and delighted at the end versus the traditional way of doing it. So the whole point is an early delivery of features without the technical debt. Okay, so not only you start to deliver, this is kind of the time, you start delivering early, smaller increments, but you're not doing it only just a working product, you're doing a working product without the technical debt. If you do, we'll talk about done in a minute, but if you basically do try to achieve more, but not do it as well, you're going to gain technical debt that eventually you'll have to take care of. So the whole thing started with a bunch of people that were doing product development, software development for a long time before. It started, the manifesto was written in 2001. And it's basically started with a bunch of people that were doing software development and were trying to find better ways to do software development and helping others do it. And what they realized is in doing lightweight software development, they are basically value individuals and interactions more than processes and tools. They value working software more than comprehensive documentation. They value customer collaboration more than the contract negotiation, and they value responding to change more than following a plan. And it's not that the things on the right are not important, and they are important in every project. The things on the left are more important and have more value. So let's talk into the Agile Manifesto principles. So the Agile Manifesto principles evolved around the things that are important. And we start with, it basically goes, if you're going to follow this, it goes like this, more or less. So the idea is the highest priority is the customer. Okay, and satisfying the customer is what we're trying to do by early and continuous delivery and getting feedback quickly. We're basically welcoming change, okay, in requirements. If we show it to the customer has something to say about it, and then we change the requirements accordingly. But we're basically aiming to harness this change to the customer competitive advantage. So eventually we'll deliver something that's more appropriate. We deliver working software very frequently. So either every 2 weeks or up to 2 months, it depends on the actual software you're delivering, but you're delivering on a regular basis, frequently, and getting the customer to actually look at it. There is a close daily cooperation between the business people and the developers. It's very important, kind of, if you compare to waterfall, and waterfall, it's kind of a black box, right? You create all the documentation and all the requirements, and then you let the development team go work on it, and you come back a few months later seeing the result of the work, and it might not be exactly what you had in mind. So this way you kind of have a daily cooperation, you see it in progress, and you have the ability to influence the decisions that are done day to day. You create a motivated team. You build it around the motivated individuals, and you give them the environment and the support they need to basically do the best work that they can. It's very, very important to this structure to have face-to-face conversation. There are ways to overcome it if you're not sitting next to each other or co-locating, but it's super, super important for this team environment to work. The main basically primary measure of progress is a working software. Okay, so you're not just delivering pieces of a software, you're delivering a working software on a regular basis that customers can actually try and use and give you feedback on. It basically creates a sustainable development environment in which the team can continue forever, delivering kind of increments, but running on a regular pace. It gives continuous attention to excellence, both in the technical term and in the design. So it's not that you deliver something that's working but has no robust architecture or design, and then at the end you kind of think about how to scale and how to do these things. You start from the beginning. It's very simple. Okay, you start with the MVP, right? And you try to maximize the amount of work not done versus the amount of work done. It basically allows the team to come up with the best architecture, the best requirements, and the best design by the team and the communication with the customer. And the team is actually taking time every 2 weeks to reflect on their process and try to find ways to get more effective and to adjust their processes accordingly. So a lot of times we hear Agile and Scrum kind of as synonymous words. They're actually not. So Agile is a set of principles for software development that basically allow for cross-functional teams to collaborate and release small increments of a working product. All the other forgot the word. Damn. Basically, it's all the other methods. Sorry. So all the other methods are basically under the umbrella of Agile. Agile didn't create the kind of the tools and the jargon for each of them. It kind of creates the principles, and then each of those were created from actual people that were doing Agile work and kind of refining the tools and the structure. So things like Crystal, which is crystal clear, and Dynamic System Development Method, which is the DSDM, and the Extreme Programming, which is the XP, and the Feature-Driven Development are all different ways of doing Agile. Kanban is actually a tool that helps all of them, which is basically allowing to visualize where we are in the project, which is very, very important in every sprint and along the development cycle. And we're going to get into Scrum separately in a second. So what is Scrum? Scrum is basically a method of restarting a play in rugby. And it basically involves the team kind of huddling together and trying to gain possession of the ball to start the game. It is also the most popular way to introduce Agile into the organization due to its simplicity and flexibility. I will attempt to start a video. Hopefully that will work. This is the Haka. And I don't know if there. Okay, so that was the Haka. And the Haka is basically the most famous. It's a Maori warrior song, and it's basically done by the All Blacks, which are the most famous rugby team. It basically it's the epitome basically of a Scrum team. It comes to show a transcendent team. It has intense focus on the goal. It is radical collaborators. They have a hunger to crush, and you can see it in their eyes. And they have a universal excitement when any team member succeeds as a team. So this is the All Blacks and the Haka, and it's basically a very powerful video to use to show what a Scrum team should be. So the Scrum team. Scrum team has basically 3 roles. It has the product owner. It has the development team, the Scrum team, and the Scrum Master. And the product owner is in charge of basically maximizing the return on investment from the development effort. So he's in charge of, or she's in charge of, the product vision, prioritizing the backlog, and basically adjusting the long-term plan and expectations, such as release plans, according to the team's progress. The product owner is basically the one that brings the stakeholders' interest into the team on the regular day-to-day job. The Scrum Master facilitates the process. So he helps the team kind of go through the Scrum process. He helps resolve impediments, which are very important. He creates an environment that's conducive to the team being able to self-organize and to find the best way for them to accomplish the goals for the sprints. And he also captures the empirical data that basically allows to adjust the forecasts. So the burn down charts and all the visualization that goes into the planning to make sure that everybody sees where the team is at every point. And how they progress towards the end goal. The team itself is a cross-functional team. It's basically everything you need, soup to nuts, to be able to deliver a functional piece of functionality all the way to the customer. It involves testing and business analysis, and the actual front end and back end developers, and anything else you need in a team to basically deliver a working code.
So we have a question that just came in.
Yeah.
This one from Jonathan Berg, and he's asking, can you comment more on making Agile work when everyone is not co-located?
Definitely, Jonathan. I'm going to comment on it later in the presentation.
I can't see you.
Yes? You can't see me. Hold on. Can you see me now? Yes, you can. So, Jonathan, I'm going to address it later in the presentation, but generally speaking, there are ways to. It's definitely better to co-locate, especially if you put together design, development, and the product owner. But if you can't do that, there are ways to accomplish it anyway. We have a lot of technology to support us in doing it. So it's not make or break if you can't co-locate. But we'll talk about it more later.
All right, that's all the questions we have right now. Take it away.
Okay. So we'll go back here. So we talked about the Scrum Roles. Let's talk about the meetings and the process. And this is basically kind of the organizing principles with which you go through Scrum. So you basically have a product owner that's in charge of getting all the information and the inputs from executives, from stakeholders, from customers, from users, and organizing it in a product backlog that's basically ranked by the value to the customer. Okay, so the most valuable thing to the customer would be first in the product backlog. Then there is the sprint planning meeting, which is basically where the team and the product owner are sitting together to select what is going to be able to achieved during a sprint time. And they start at the process. At the beginning of the process, they start with actually deciding how long is a sprint. Usually, it's between a week and 4 weeks. With kind of, a happy medium is 2 weeks, in which, at the beginning of which, the team will sit together and kind of choose the right things from the product backlog to bring into the sprint backlog, again, from the highest value to the lowest value ranked. And then they'll break these user stories, which are the requirements from the customers, into tasks that the team members can actually perform during the sprint. The sprint, as we said, is a 1 to 4 week time. Once a day, the team, the Scrum Master, the team, and the product owner are meeting for a daily Scrum or stand-up meeting. It's a very short meeting, 10 to 15 minutes, in which every single person on the team is talking about what they have done yesterday, what they're planning to do today, and what are the impediments that are stopping them or making their work less effective. And the whole point of this stand-up is sharing the information between the team members and to kind of identify these impediments and getting the whole team to work on finding solutions for the impediments. As I said, the stand-up is a very, very short meeting. It's kind of bubbling up the problems, and then you take everything that is a problem and the team needs to work on kind of offline after that. The team is working like this for 2 weeks. There are burn down, burn up charts, or basically burn down of the stories or the tasks that were planned for the sprint versus the burned up of the shippable pieces that are ready as you continue through the sprint. And at the end of the sprint, you get a shippable, finished piece of code, piece of feature or product. And then you do 2 things. You do a sprint review in which you actually invite people to demo the product that you created. These can be stakeholders, these can be users, these can be other people from the organization, execs and stuff that need to see it. It's time for the product owner, though it was part kind of the process throughout, to actually look at the shippable pieces and decide if these are completely done and are shippable, or if they're not. If they're not, they will go into the backlog and into the next sprint to be finished. And eventually you kind of select what is shippable and going out, and the team stays kind of behind to do the sprint retrospective, which is super important for them to kind of look at the work, look at their velocity, which is basically the how much they were able to accomplish from what they planned. Look at how well their processes are working, what can be changed, what are the impediments, and try to improve their work from sprint to sprint. So this is Agile, and it's a very nice story, and it's not a silver bullet. Okay, so Agile can work extremely well for organizations if they follow kind of the rules and they understand them and they have the right management support and they have the right structure. Organizations that are jumping into Agile and are not understanding the intricacies of Agile, or don't have the right support, or don't have the right structure, and Jonathan was talking about not being able to co-locate. These are basically impediments to the ability to deliver Agile, and you kind of need to understand them and solve them. So let's talk about some of these. So the first impediment is a lack of sponsor support. And this I found to be a very big one. Usually what happens is that the team or the product owner kind of understand the value in Agile and bring it to the table as a grassroots effort to organize and to maybe optimize the development processes. If you don't have the sponsor support, if you don't have management support to Agile, what will happen is that you're most likely going to face difficulties with resistance from business partners, things like not letting you see customers, okay, or understand the customer needs all the way, not showing demos of working product to the customers on a regular basis, not coordinating with other teams and other timelines, and not being able to see the full picture. You're going to get resistance from other development teams. They might work in waterfall or have kind of their plans set up for the year. And by you coming in and not having a set plan and not being able to give an exact date for when things are shipping, you're basically disrupting their process, and you're going to hear from them. And also, it's very important to remember that eventually you need funding and resources to be able to do that and to be able to do that continuously. A lot of companies have kind of budgeting planned more than a year out, right? So they start kind of mid-year for the next year, and they want to know exactly what you're going to deliver and how many people you will need. And sometimes you aren't able to give them this information. So they'll start with like a small team and then add to it and revisit throughout the year. And that's not going to be conducive to a working Scrum team or working Agile team that works together on a regular basis, understands how they work well together, and are able to actually build an understanding of their velocity and understanding of their collaboration and what they need to actually do the work. So it's super, super important to start with management. Another.
I have a question that just came in.
Go ahead.
So this one comes from Maggie Bender. And Maggie asks, any suggestions for dealing within an organization where requests come in as waterfall requirements, but the work is executed in Scrum?
So the requests come in as a waterfall, but the execution is Scrum. Okay. Usually what will happen is that if you take management along with you in the process, they will learn to appreciate the value of Agile. So even though the request is kind of an Agile, a waterfall request, which is kind of big, long document with a lot of details and a very planned project management kind of plan to delivery. If you take the executives and the customers and the stakeholders along with you in the process, they will kind of little by little understand the value and abandon some of the plan. Okay, when they see that the customer is actually reacting to what you put in front of them, and you get valuable feedback from them, they'll be able to kind of say, okay, we understand the value, we understand what the customer wants, we definitely want to build something the customer wants and not doesn't, right? So we'll let you kind of follow this instead of your waterfall. But it's not easy, and it requires kind of hand-holding and getting them involved in the process to do that.
All right, another question just came in, or
Yeah.
a combo question. This one comes from an anonymous individual. And the first part of the question is, how do you determine value if there are conflicts in defining priority from stakeholders? And then they go on to continue to clarify, by value, I meant factors to determine priority for items to come in the product backlog. Say sales is pushing. That's what that word is. Say sales is pushing for some feature which is not aligned with MVP roadmap.
Okay.
Sounds like they have something very specific in mind.
Yeah. So let's think through that. Generally speaking, the value is what the customer will value, right? Not what the sales will value. And you'll need to find a way to prove that. So I would get other stakeholders from the organization, like customer success, for instance, to allow to explain the value of the different things in the roadmap and in the backlog versus what sales is pushing for. And it might be that sales is pushing for something that's, legit and will provide value for the customer. Sometimes you do get though requests from any executives or business units in the organization that allows to drive the overall value of the product. It's not necessarily something that's specifically relevant for the customer at that time, but it kind of has a broader value to the overall system. And you might need that to facilitate better communication, better delivery overall, or something that's larger that's going to come in later on. And you need to basically balance it. You need to balance the long term and these structural, systematic things that you do need to bring into the product with the incremental, real, tangible value feature that you can deliver to the customers. So you kind of do a little bit of both. For the sake of balance, you won't do just the short-term biggest bang for the buck, because then you'll realize later on that you're unable to scale or unable to deliver larger pieces.
Okay. That's all the questions I've got right now. Keep them coming in at theproductmentor.com/live and take it away.
I'll go back to the presentation. So another big one. This is things that I get into probably every day. So in project management, you have basically the cost and the time and the scope set. Okay, so you have resources and you have the cost planned in advance and you have the scope planned in advance. And this is kind of the waterfall way, right? And what people are expecting to get. The only thing they forget is that in most cases, what we plan for, okay, in the kind of the big bang waterfall scenario, doesn't really happen in reality. In reality, we are going to be late. It is going to cost more. It is going to take more time. And if we force it to happen, quality is going to suffer. Agile is basically kind of flipping it on its head. It says, okay, we have cost and time set. Okay, we have these 2 weeks increments and we have an overall kind of plan for these 2 weeks. We might be not, and usually at the beginning of a project, it's going to be guaranteed that estimates are not going to be exactly right. Okay, so you think you're going to accomplish A, B, C, D in 4 weeks, but going into the end of sprint 1, which is 2 weeks in, you're saying, uh-oh, A, B, C, D, not going to happen. If we're able to finish A and B, it will be good. So we're adjusting the plan accordingly, and what basically suffers is the scope. Okay, so you're able to keep cost and time set and keep quality set, which is super, super important, and kind of stretch the scope over more time, which would have happened anyway in waterfall. It's just not planned this way.
So I have another question that just came in, and it sounds like there's a very specific scenario in this individual's mind. I will do my best. This one, again, also straddles 2 questions. So let me try to merge and parse it. This comes from Furquan, and he is asking how to deal with a counterpart project manager who is not interested and does not understand the product at all. They have a date and they want a product. The stakeholders from the customer side are busy, who can only show up after the deadline. How to deal with these kind of organizations? I feel there might be some bias in this question or some other kind of teasing to kind of get into it, but I'll let you get into that, Addi.
Okay, so I think it's pretty much the same, right? So you have a process, and your process is going to deliver value to the customer. If you have a deadline and this deadline is unrealistic, the project manager can jump up and down. It's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. What is going to happen is either you cut scope and you deliver something. And again, if you think about how you deliver, you start with delivering the most valuable things first. So if you think about the Pareto 80-20 rule, you're probably going to get the most value ready. Okay, so you're going to deliver the most value to the user on a certain time, okay, instead of the full value. And it's going to cover 80% of what the customer requested and not that 100% of what the customer requested, but it is going to provide value and work and be delivered. And the excess time that you need to deliver the rest is going to delight the user because they got value before they got a smaller piece of value, but they're going to get it before you finish everything. If you wait until the end, you are going to make the customer frustrated because you're not going to deliver anything until then. You're also going to, so you're talking about the project manager date. It's basically, if you look at all the waterfall projects I've ever worked on, they're never on time because they can't be. You don't know everything at the beginning to be able to plan really well. And what suffers is usually quality. So you'll cut on testing, you'll cut on making sure that the product works well, and you deliver something that is going to make the customer unhappy again. So by delivering, not all, but some of it or part of it, earlier to the customer, maybe earlier than the date that the project manager had in mind even, you're going to make the customer happier, faster, and basically shut the project manager complaints down.
The sense I also had from the question was, it sounded like they might be having some challenges with their project manager.
Right.
And so I think there's some reading between the lines there.
Yeah.
But could you maybe speak to? It sounds like there's some communication challenges between the product person and the project manager. It's a big statement to say that the project manager doesn't care about the product. It could totally be true. But I don't know, maybe you could kind of address some of that spectrum of possibility there as well to help that individual.
So it goes back to kind of, the management sponsorship and the understanding of the value that Agile brings to the table. The project manager should be part of the process as well, part of the team, kind of understanding the process and understanding the value. In some cases, project managers are basically coming from a different kind of, organizations have their own business goals, and you need to understand that. And it's basically, I would work with the project manager to understand where do they come from. Okay, as Jeremy said, it's not that they don't care about the product. They probably have a goal to release on time. If they don't release on time, something bad happens to their salary or something, right? So you need to understand where they're coming from and see how we can address it in the best way for the customer, for the product, and for the project manager.
Cool. So yeah, I don't know any other questions. Keep them coming in at theproductmentor.com/live, and back to you, Addi.
Cool. So we'll go back to, so lack of focus is the next one, and this one comes, this caricature comes a lot in Scrum training, which is basically the pig and the chicken. The chicken wants to start a restaurant, and she wants to call it ham and eggs, and the pig is like, no thanks, I'm going to be committed, you're just going to be involved. So this commitment and involvement thing, or you can look at it as who's accountable and who's responsible, is very, very important. And basically the whole organization needs to be part of this effort, okay? The whole organization needs to understand what's the value of Agile, what are we going to bring to our customers, and how are we going to do that, and be part of the process, part of the demos, part of the planning, part of the coordination sometimes. What's important to understand is that the pigs, the people that have skin in the game, or bacon in the pot, are basically the ones that are doing the job, the day-to-day job. And they're the ones that are empowered to do the day-to-day job as best they can with the tools they have and with their ability to self-organize. So they get a goal from management, and they need to break it down and find the best way to get there, and find the best way to get to small increments of value to the customer faster and more efficient over time. And for that, they need everybody's support, but they are the ones that need to do the work. Another one is insufficient training, and that's a very big one, unfortunately. People love to say they're doing Agile or they're doing Scrum. They're basically jumping on the bandwagon, especially these days, jumping on the bandwagon very, very quickly without really understanding what Agile takes and what Agile is. It's basically not enough to say you're doing Agile. It's not enough to do daily Scrum meetings. It's not enough to do demos at the end. It's important that you find a way to self-organize to deliver functional, shippable product at the end of a sprint. It's very important that you get it in front of customers and get this feedback loop going. Because if you don't get this feedback loop going, you basically know, you have no way of knowing what the customer wants, and you're not very different from a waterfall. You need to be able to understand what are teams' impediments, okay, and how to solve teams' impediments, and how to create this environment that lets the team be empowered and be self-organizing and be able to deliver this great, result of shippable products earlier, higher value to the customer earlier. If you don't have the right training, if you don't have experience, and you don't bring somebody from the outside with experience to understand how your organization works, how the project manager, what are the project management goals, and how to mash them together. And there are ways to mash them together. If you don't have this, you're basically going to fail. You're probably going to fail faster. You're probably going to fail more miserably because it is very transparent. Okay, so you're going to share with the whole world that you failed. But if you do it right, or even if you fail and then kind of learn from it and self-organize better, organize the teams better, the team structure better, organize the planning process better, okay? So the project manager can actually understand the planning process and be part of it. Organize the budgeting better and the support better. Only then you can succeed. And it's very important to start with training. So I'm going to talk a little bit about large-scale Scrum, because it is possible. Okay, so the idea is that, Scrum works for small teams, and more so for greenfield projects, but Scrum can work for everybody else. You just need to find a way to harness the power of Scrum or the power of Agile to your specific organization. And for that, you do need help. You do need somebody that understands, that has experience, that can help you kind of drive these changes in the organization. But it definitely can work. Generally speaking, Agile was created for small teams. And Scrum was created for small teams. But basically, as people started practicing Scrum and Agile, they realized that with small adaptations, kind of being very jealous to the principles that do work for Scrum, you can actually start doing large-scale Scrum. So things like, putting the customer front and center, right, and building for the customer. Thinking about the product as a whole product, right? There is like one product that you're delivering, small pieces of it on a regular basis. Talking about the continuous improvement in the process itself and finding a way to make it better for the team to do their work. the part of the lean thinking. Okay, so do more. Basically, more is less. Thinking about how to do an MVP first. Thinking about how to cut the waste and do it more efficiently and better. These are regular kind of Scrum principles. Transparency, super important, right, in Scrum, and it's very easy in a small team. How do you scale that? How do you continue to have this transparency in a larger team or multiple teams environments? Other things that are coming into kind of the equation are things like system thinking. Okay, it's not only a little product anymore, it's something bigger, and you kind of need to think about this bigger picture as well. You need to think about the queuing of the different, and we touched a little bit about it before, right? You need to think about this queuing of the requirements, kind of who comes first, what's more important, sales more important than marketing more important than, a customer segment. Who's the customer that's more important, right? What's the persona that you want to satisfy first? There are queuing theories that you can employ to basically being able to manage that. So this is kind of like marrying both worlds, marrying the good things that Scrum and Agile is bringing with the systematic approach that large organizations require. So there are many approaches to large-scale Scrum. Less, the one that we saw before, is one of them. Another is scaled Agile, and this comes from the person, Jeff Sutherland, that actually started Scrum back in '93. And this, if you look at the diagram and kind of try to figure out what's in it, you'll kind of see the same structures and processes happen, only with kind of another layer on top of it. So from the team and program perspective, this part is kind of the same. Okay, so you have epics, and you have stories, and you have the Scrum, and you have the team that's sitting together, the owner, the master, and the team that are taking pieces from the backlog and getting into a sprint and kind of delivering on a regular basis. What you have on top of that is this Agile release train, which is basically the train that's going to release solutions or products to your customers that require more than just one team. Okay, so different teams are going to deliver different things into the release train, and the release train is going to just continue going. So the release train is the release cadence, what's getting into the customer hands eventually, but it might require things like enablers from different business units or features from different business units that are going to get into this stream. And on top of that, you have the portfolio management. Okay, the portfolio management has kind of a group that managing from a portfolio perspective, the program portfolio, the owners of the epics, which can be from different business units, the architects of the enterprise that's looking at the whole portfolio of the enterprise and how things are getting into customers. And these are basically kind of, again, marrying the good stuff of Agile with requirements that large organizations have. So a couple of things that are important. So in a scaled Agile framework, basically the multi-release train, so you can have one release train, right? Which is kind of everything goes into this release train, and the release train goes on and releases pieces. But you can have a lot of them because you have a lot of products and you have a lot of different customers and customer segments. And you might have kind of different channels, right? You can have a website, a few applications, a few mobile applications, a mobile web experience, these are all kind of different streams, right? That when you release to them, you can release only to them, or you can release something that crosses a few. So if you look at kind of the subsystems and the capabilities, so things like customer enrollment, customer login, authentication, security, stuff like that can be cross few subsystems and deliver kind of a capability or a feature across multiple release trains. And kind of get into different release trains either at the same time if needed, or at different times depending on the release train and the need. So these are kind of, you mash up a few of these small teams, efficient, kind of releasing increments to the customer into something that's like more systematic and more large scale. Another way of thinking about it is multiple teams working together. So you have one product backlog, okay, and you have a few teams that are working on it. And it's important to note that in Agile, because of the face-to-face direct communication and the transparency that's needed, teams cannot be larger than probably 3 to 9, 10 people max. More than that, you cannot really continue to have like real communication one-to-one with all the team members. So the small teams are staying pretty small and very focused and very empowered to do something very, very small. And together, a lot of teams can accomplish something bigger. So the whole teams work towards a single goal, and it can be, for instance, again, if we take the example of an application, you can have an iOS application, an Android application, a mobile web experience, and all of them need to have the same experiences to the users. But these are different teams that are working on different shippable products that need to be coordinated to be able to release together. And the weekly release train might release very small increments first internally to kind of create these like applications you cannot release every week, especially not in iOS, right? You need Apple to review it, and it takes 2 weeks and kind of lock down during this time from releasing another one. So you kind of need to build around it and coordinate through the different teams to be able to continually deliver value to your customers.
So another question just came in from Furquan, and he asks, when multiple teams are working on a single product, in your opinion, what would be the best way to share knowledge so that one team doesn't disrupt another team's work?
So sharing knowledge so one team doesn't disrupt another team's work. So basically, again, the most important thing in Agile, I think, is over communication. Okay, so the idea is to have kind of this close-knit team working very closely together, but other teams kind of building off this and making sure that it's hard work, it's not easy, but you kind of need to build structures that ensure that you have this communication between cross teams and between teams. So you have, sorry, you kind of have your product kind of goal at the end, and you have a bunch of teams that start at the same time. They have the same cadence, okay, so 2 weeks increments. They have the same kind of planning cadence. They do the sprint planning at the same time. They take from the same backlog, and then they need to break it down to what works for them. The coordination needs to happen there. So you kind of need how much lead time, for instance, a backend team needs. Okay, if they need more lead time, they need to know that this is going to be happening so they can start earlier. And they probably need a couple of sprints lead time on the front end. And it's fine. You just coordinate and figure it out when you do the backlog grooming, and you let them take it earlier on so they can finish by the time you actually need it for the front end teams. The same way with design. Design probably needs some lead time, right? So for them to be ready in time for you to actually pick it up and put it in your sprint, they need to know that this is coming up. They need to take it on probably a couple of sprints ahead. They need to be able to do their process, right? Putting it in front of customers, doing user testing, collecting the feedback, and bringing something to the table at the beginning of a sprint for you to actually develop that's built enough for you to start working on it. And they can continue the work with you as you develop the product, but they need this lead time. So this communication is nonstop, right? And it happens at all levels. It happens in the small Agile team, but it also happens across Agile teams and as the organization or the program is happening.
All right. So yeah, that's all the questions we got right now. So back to the presentation.
Okay. So we were just talking about it. Scrum of Scrums, collaboration between Scrums. So the idea is that you have a maximum amount of people you can actually communicate effectively with for the Scrum purposes. And what you do, you start building structures on top of it to communicate between Scrum teams. So you basically get the Scrum team representatives, probably the Scrum Master, maybe the product owner, maybe people that affect the Scrum, like stakeholders and stuff like that, to come in and do a daily Scrum of Scrum in which communication is across Scrums. And in this communication, you talk about coordination between the Scrum teams, lead times, impediments. So if one Scrum team is going to basically not allow you to start your work on time, you kind of need to give them the heads up in advance so they'll be able to complete their work before you start. So this Scrum of Scrum, or any way you want to call planning meetings that are at kind of the higher level of representatives from the Scrum teams, and which you basically do the same thing. You kind of talk about what each Scrum team is doing today, what each Scrum team is going to do tomorrow, what are you planning to deliver at the end of the sprint, and what are your impediments for this sprint and for the next sprint, to kind of as a heads up to make sure that all the Scrum teams are working in lockstep. So we talked a little bit about time boxing and how it's different between the traditional approach and the Agile approach, in which basically in the traditional approach, the waterfall, the feature are fixed and the quality is going to basically suffer if you reach the end of your time and cost, and you're pushed to deliver. In Agile, you basically fix the time and cost and quality, and the features are going to be variable. So when you work on a plan for a specific team, or you work for a plan for all of the teams together, it's important to kind of align on what is fixed, the time frame, right? These 2 weeks, next 2 months, and what's basically going to be able to be delivered over this time. And this is changing constantly as you kind of realize your velocity, as things that you didn't plan to come into play, as more requirements are coming into play, and you kind of need to change your user stories and your plan accordingly. As things change, this is the magic of Agile, right? As things change, you just react to it and push things further, making sure what you deliver is actually working product in the highest quality. So we talked a little bit, I think Jonathan was asking a question before about distributed teams. Generally speaking, again, face-to-face is the best. You kind of have no boundaries, no barriers. You see the people every day. You kind of learn how to work with them better when you work next to them. But if you don't have this next to them, there are ways to achieve it from afar. So the first thing is, if you do have teams that are not co-located or team members that are not co-located, when you start a new feature or a new team, bring them all together. Bring them all together for a sprint or two. Let them kind of create the system, create the environment for them to work in together, decide on the timing, decide on how to do estimates, decide on the cadence of the meetings, decide on how they're going to interact with each other on a regular basis when they're sitting together, and then let them go back to where they came from, and make sure you still have these as much as possible face-to-face. So first of all, video conferencing, right? Video conferencing today is pretty common, and it's pretty easy to do. If you can't do a video conferencing in one room, so everybody has kind of the same ability to talk and communicate, it's better. If everybody is connecting from their own computers, or some are in a room and some in the computers, it's kind of throwing the balance a little bit. So if somebody's connecting from a computer, it's better that everybody's connecting from the computer, so it's kind of leveling the playing field. But it's important to not only hear the voice and the tone, it's also important to see the body language. So that's one way of doing it. And in my teams, we do at least stand-ups this way. So once a day, you'll see everybody, you'll talk to everybody, you'll talk about the impediments and kind of seeing people face-to-face. If you can't do that, voice, phone calls and bridges are also a possibility. In one of my teams, what we did was open a bridge for kind of hours in the day. So from noon to 4 p.m., the bridge was open. Everybody could jump on it and talk to everybody else by just calling their names. So it's like you're in the room, but you don't see them. So voice is another option. Another option is with a team that really doesn't have any time with me at all. What we do is we use HipChat, which is like Slack, kind of a group chatting, and they basically do they do their stand-up on HipChat. So when I come into the office in my morning, which is their night and they're asleep, I see the stand-up kind of as a chat. And be able to understand where they are and react to the impediments that they need to take care of. So this is another way of doing it. Email is kind of the least favorable ones of all. It's just we're bombarded with too many emails, and it's email chains are not helpful in any way. But you do what you can to use technology to your favor and make sure that people are communicating regularly, extensively, over communicating. So last slide, talking a little bit about UX. So I touched a little bit about it before. Kind of UX has its own process, right? There's design thinking, where you kind of need to brainstorm and understand kind of how you're going to design, what you're going to design, and experiment and show it to customers and refine your hypotheses. And then you have kind of the lean UX and the build, in which you actually design for a specific feature with the team, for the sprint. Kind of marrying these two and kind of taking the best of both worlds into bringing the best customer experience to as a planning to the sprint and in the sprint itself is very important. And again, we'll do kind of the planning and give heads up to the UX team to start doing planning probably a couple of sprints before the sprint that's going to work on the delivery. And when they get with something that's kind of half-baked from their perspective into the delivery and the development process, they can continue the process with the team. So kind of giving the mocks, doing the user testing during the sprint, and kind of refining the experience during the sprint with the team. It's so important to have the whole organization kind of harnessed to the process, because if you don't do that, you kind of lose, and you end up with, saying that you're doing Agile, but not really achieving it to the best of your ability.
So I think we just had one question just come in, so this will probably be the last question for this talk. Again, from Furquan. And he's asking, how do you deal with development teams who start exploiting Agile, making overly large estimates, not doing any work at the sprint start?
Wow.
What should be the factors of accountability?
Bad team. Okay, so Agile is super transparent, right? You have the Kanban board. Everybody can see it. Everybody can see what's being achieved. Everybody can see the demo at the end. It's hard for a team to be really bad at estimates and not doing work for a long time without being called on. So you basically, estimates are going to be very bad at the beginning. Research is talking about a factor of 16. Okay, estimates are going to be bad. They don't know how to estimate the work, especially because all they think of as individuals are their own work, right? They think about the little piece of code that they need to write. They don't think about the testing of it and the integration of it, and the testing of the integrated solution, and the kind of ending up with a shippable product requires much more overhead than just writing code. And they're not used to thinking this way, right? So they're going to be missing estimates left and right. But if you have a team that kind of stick together for a length of time, and they learn to work together, they learn to pick up slack from others, to kind of get to the end point as a team faster and better. They learn to estimate better because you can see that they estimated, 30 points for the sprint, and they ended up doing only 15, but their estimates is actually for like 6 sprints, right? And it's actually much more. So it's kind of very easy to see from the burn down and burn up charts, and from the actual delivered product, how far the estimate was from reality and what needs to be taken into consideration when you do estimates. And over time, they learn to do it better. And they need to show progress. It's not a black box anymore, right? It's not like waterfall. They need to show progress every day in stand-up. It's very easy to find the ones that are not working. And it's very easy for the team to kind of put pressure on the people that are not working, to kind of get together and actually, do the work, because otherwise you won't be able to deliver anything or much less at the end of the sprint. And it's up to the team. This is why it is a self-organizing group that needs to have this peer pressure, right? And the goal and the empowerment to achieve the goal together. Without it, you can have slackers. You always have slackers, but the team should be able to either handle the slackers or get them out.
Yep. So thank you to our speaker, Addi Regev, Director of Product at Outbrain, for today's discussion of Agile in the real world. And as always, the presentation will be posted to our SlideShare channel. And a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guide, and everyone else who joined us today, and the product mentor. And also don't forget, if you'd like to be a product mentor, very much like today's speaker, Addi, to product people of all sorts all around the world, visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. Session 6 starts January 8th. And we're looking for lots and lots more mentors, so sign up right away. And also, if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own free-for-all job board at theproductjobs.com. With all that said, thanks, everyone, and bye.